Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our International Election Observation Mission, which is being organised by the British Islands and Mediterranean region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. My name is Deputy Rob Ward. I'm head of the mission. I'm from Jersey, an island in the English Channel, where I'm an elected politician, a member of the State's Assembly. I also am very proud to chair the Jersey branch of the CPA, and I'm Minister for Education. It's a great privilege to be here. It's my first time in the Cayman Islands, and I want to thank all of those who we've met so far for giving such a warm welcome to myself and the team. As I said, the mission is being organised by the British Islands and Mediterranean region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, sometimes shortened to the CPA-BIMR, which is much less of a mouthful. The Commonwealth Parliamentary Association brings parliamentarians across the Commonwealth together to promote parliamentary democracy and good governance. And election observation missions are an important part of this. Since 2010, we've organised more than 20 election observation missions. Most of them have been in the UK overseas territories. My island of Jersey has had its elections observed. And we previously organised 3 election missions to Cayman Islands, 2013, 2017 and 2021. The 2021 mission was virtual due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're really glad to be back here doing an in-person observation over the coming days. And we're delighted that we have been invited to observe the 2025 general election. And as the representative of Head of State, that invitation has come from the Governor, Her Excellency Jane Owen. We appreciate the engagement our mission is receiving from all political parties and candidates. We are engaging with all of the political parties as well as independent candidates as part of the mission in line with our impartial approach. I'm joined here today by 3 other members of our team, and more members will be arriving later in the week. This is an international mission, and the parliaments of the Isle of Man, Scotland, Wales are represented, as well as Ireland, the UK, and myself from Jersey. So in addition to myself here today, I have to my right Anne Marlborough. Anne is an election analyst from Ireland and is leading our observation of the legal and political aspects of the election, and she has a great deal of observation experience. To my left is Sandy Gale. Sandy is an election analyst from the UK. Sandy is leading our observation of the campaign and election process, and she too has a wealth of experience across the world. And to the far right there, of my right, Martin Vickery is our election coordinator. He is from the UK and with colleagues from the CPA-BIMR is organising the mission. We arrived yesterday, and on Friday we will be joined by 3 short-term observers for the election week itself. They are Evelyn Tweed, a member of the Scottish Parliament, the Honourable Tim Johnson, a member of the Parliament of the Isle of Man, Alan Davis, a member of the Welsh Parliament. For most of us, it's our first time in the Cayman Islands. We are already finding it fascinating understanding your electoral system and appreciate the time that many people in Cayman are giving to us to share their experiences. So I will now hand over to Anne Marlborough to share a little about an election observation, what it is, and also maybe what it's not. Anne, take over.
Great, thank you very much, Rob. And I just want to add my thanks to viewers for the warm welcome that we've already received here in the Cayman Islands. It's a great privilege to be here. So the important thing to understand about our work as an election observation mission really is to focus on the word observation. We're very much here to watch, to listen, and to be curious about what happens. We want to see what happens. We're going to ask lots of questions, but we ourselves are literally only observing the elections. We're not participating in any way. We're not stakeholders. We're not going to interfere in any way in this election. So our observation is informed by international law, by the international standards that apply to elections. principles which have been developed gradually over decades under international human rights law. And the purpose of these standards is all about supporting democracy, supporting good governance, and that's what brings us here. So we'll be striving during our observation to understand the legal framework for the elections here in the Cayman Islands. We want to understand what is the applicable international law and what's the law of the Cayman Islands that governs the conduct of these elections. We'll be discussing those issues with lots and lots of stakeholders. We'll want to understand the accessibility of the law. That's the kind of thing that we will discuss in the course of our meetings. Now, an objective of this mission, of all election observation missions, is in some way to be of service in supporting democracy. We want to bolster the legitimacy of credible elections. So one element of our efforts can be to publish some recommendations after the electoral process is over, addressing how future electoral processes might be improved. Certainly, there's no such thing as a perfect election. There's no model election anywhere in the world. Many countries receive election observation missions. I have been on many election observation missions around the world. So our approach is very specific. CPA BIMR has a methodology. It applies the same methodology whichever jurisdiction it goes to in its observation of the election. But also CPA BIMR has endorsed the Declaration of Principles of International Election Observation. And also we have all subscribed to the Code of Conduct for International Election Observers, which was signed at the UN in 2005, and the CPA BIMR as an entity is part of this. So, as Rob already mentioned, I'm from Ireland, but our work isn't that I'm going to come here and in some way compare the elections of the Cayman Islands to the elections in Ireland. Really, that's not what it's about. We're looking at this election as a specific event on its own, governed purely by the laws and the standards that are applicable to the Cayman Islands, and that the Cayman Islands has taken on for itself, and the laws that it has introduced domestically. So we'll be using the international standards and the domestic laws as our guide as we undertake our observation in the days ahead. Now, I'll tell you what we're not here to do as well. We're certainly not here to assess any political dimension of these elections. We really are not going to comment on who wins the elections because we don't have any political vested interest in this. I think Rob already used the word impartial, and I'll reiterate it. We are an impartial mission. It's a technical mission that we are here to undertake. So we don't have political links either as individuals or as a collective to the Cayman Islands, and we don't wish for any particular result. Rather, it's all about the process. It's a very technical body of work that we're going to do during our time here. But anyway, I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Sandy Gale, and she'll set out some more detail about what our observation will look like in practice.
Thank you, Anne. And as Anne also said, I'm very privileged to be here with my colleagues. It's my first time in the Cayman Islands. So we explained a little bit about the theory of an election observation mission. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what that actually looks like in practice. So as my colleague Rob mentioned, we only arrived yesterday afternoon. Until the day before election day, we've got a very busy schedule. We'll be meeting with a variety of stakeholders involved in the election process. These include people such as the election officials, candidates from all the political parties, as well as those running as independents. We also plan to observe some rallies in the run-up to the election day. We also plan and have arranged to meet a wide range of civil society groups that are involved in the electoral process. We treat what we are told with total confidentiality, only using the information received in an anonymous, non-attributable manner, so those we meet can speak freely to us. Election missions act independently. In line with this independence, we don't share the details of our meeting schedule with anybody. We don't make public who we are meeting and what they tell us. what we discussed in those meetings. Then on election day itself, which is going to be a long day, many of you listening here and many of you here will probably see us around on election day. We will all be out and about polling stations, in different polling stations on the island. We'll be wearing our nice election observation white high visibility jackets, so you'll be able to tell us who we are, and we will all be out observing the process. And as Anne said, we are not interfering with the process. We'll be watching, listening, and when appropriate, asking questions in an impartial and neutral way. Thank you. I will now hand back to Rob, who will explain a little bit more about what happens after election day.
Thank you. Yes. First of all, I think we'll recover a little. It actually is a very long day. We'll be at polling stations when they open at 7 a.m. and through the day until closing at 6 p.m. Then we'll observe the counting of votes into the evening and into the night. And with all of those findings, both from the meetings and the observations on election day, we will produce two documents that we trust will be beneficial and helpful to the people of the Cayman Islands. Firstly, we will produce a short preliminary statement of our findings. We will publish this on Friday, the 2nd of May, in a press conference at 10 a.m. in the morning, which will be here again. This will include some findings from our observations and some initial conclusions. Secondly, within 2 months, we will produce a final report. This will be a longer document, allowing us to reflect and consider our findings. This may include a number of recommendations. Any recommendations offered are in the spirit of wanting to support and strengthen elections in the Cayman Islands and to contribute towards democracy overall on the islands. It is for the people and institutions of the Cayman Islands to decide if they wish to take some or all of the recommendations forward. Lastly, you can get involved. We have an email address you can use to share your experience of the election process, or if you have any questions about what we're doing. Our email address is cpabimr@parliament.uk, and that address can be found on the press release that we're sharing today. So that's everything from us to begin with. So if we are happy to take questions from those present or online, so we're happy to start that process. Any questions? If you could announce yourself and your
Media House.
what group you're from. Yeah, your media
Sure.
house, that's the phrase that you use.
Thank you. My name's April Cummings. I'm with Radio Cayman. And my question is very general, so any of you can answer it. But why do you think it is important? Why do we need this?
Yeah, well, I'll start and I might move. It's important because of the process of the observation of elections can help to improve future elections and the democratic process. That's something that is undertaken across the CPA. There are international standards that we look at and international laws, and those are the types of things that we want to see and see where they're applicable to the Cayman Islands and indeed other islands and other places that are observed. That's the simplest, I think, answer to that question. Either you guys want to answer?
Thanks. Well, maybe just to say as well, we'd like to think it's something that we're offering as well to various stakeholders, particularly civil society. When we were last present physically in the country in 2017, one of our comments in the report was that civil society was still at a very limited level, that there wasn't a lot of civil society activism in the political rights area that we were addressing in our report. And then our 2021 report acknowledges the growth, the significant growth in civil society activity. So we come in as outsiders, entirely impartial, and so we're offering views that are informed from global universal standards. And I suppose we'd like to think that our findings can be a useful piece of information, but also an advocacy tool for civil society, for members of Parliament, for whoever is interested in the area of credible, legitimate elections, and somebody who might even think that there is some grounds for electoral reform. And we're offering our findings as a support to that area of work.
I mean, I would say it's about, I think the good phrase is it's about bolstering democracy in the work that we do.
So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, not so much that there's a problem to find, but more this is what's happening. You're coming with a set of values or perspectives based on these international standards, and you're going to take a look at what's happening here and see how it compares, good or bad, or just does or doesn't.
I think it's less about comparison and more about simple observation and then making comments from what is observed. There's no predetermined outcome to what we produce. That's why we have people coming across to increase the number of people who got involved in the observation itself. So that's really important to us. And it should be a positive process in terms of for democracy on the island and for the people of the Cayman Islands.
And I'd just like to make a comment there, maybe to give a fairly concrete example, might be around the area of persons with disabilities. For example, it's the most recent human rights convention, is the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and the impact of that convention is really only being understood, being developed. It's really evolving in recent years. So what we all globally thought was acceptable in access to voting rights or political participation by persons with disabilities 20 years ago or 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, is not quite the same as the international bodies are saying now. Or, for example, in relation to the political participation of women, you know, the call in the past, not that long ago, was, could we please have 30% of women? The call is moving now more towards 50% of women. So there are evolving trends in the law. So we just want to bring our knowledge of that to bear. It's again, as Rob said, it's just something we'd like to offer, but it's a very positive sign that we're here. As Rob also said, it's not the sign of a problem. Generally, the regimes with problems might not have the openness that you have. We find it a very gratifying instance that we are actually invited and stakeholders are interested in meeting us. It's an excellent beginning.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Ralph Lewis, Cayman Times, and welcome to the Cayman Islands. I think your role here is so important. Mr. Rob, no doubt you've probably seen the last recommendations from the last election. Are there any areas that jump out at you or you're overly concerned with? And if so, will you be paying attention to see if they're still existing?
To begin with, I have to say this is a separate observation mission. Recommendations that are made really are up to the Parliament of the Cayman Islands as to whether they do or don't implement them. We'll make observations as we go along, and the recommendations will come from those observations. They may be the same, they may be different, there may be common themes, but we wouldn't want to preempt any of those recommendations at the moment. This is a process, and those would come at the end of that process rather than the beginning.
Okay. And the second question is regarding the observations and the recommendations, and generally, it's up to the government of the day to make those changes that are recommended. And it's not something that will be mandated by the British government, as in we're overseas territory.
No, we're not a part of the British government at all. The CPA is countries all over the world, and the organisation is independent of that. And yes, it is absolutely up to, well, the government, I would say as a parliamentarian myself, up to your parliament, perhaps yes, to implement those, because parliaments are more than just governments. There are other members there as well. So I would, yeah, that would be my suggestion there. It is up to your parliament to what they recommend, and also up to the people of Cayman Islands as to what they want to see recommended, I suppose.
Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing your report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Raymond Taney from the Cayman Compass. And previous groups that have come here before have made recommendations on the transparency of campaign funding, for example, and a string of other recommendations, none of which have actually been implemented in Cayman. Does the CPA find that in any way dispiriting, that perhaps you're not being needed or not being listened to?
No, I don't think you can be dispirited when you're observing elections, because each election is different, each election is unique. But the process of the observation would be similar, it would be consistent. And we would make recommendations every time we observe. And as I say, we can't force those recommendations to be implemented. That's more for your islands to decide on what they want to do with those. But no, absolutely not. It's not dispiriting. It's about keeping going and being effective with the process that you use, more importantly than anything else, and getting valid recommendations at the end of that. If anyone wants to add anything to that?
Well, I suppose there has been also some bit of change over the years. And for example, when this CPA BIMR came for its first election observation mission here, the Convention on Corruption had not yet been extended to the Cayman Islands. So there has been some development, and you have the new commissions such as the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Standards in Public Office Commission, the Human Rights Commission, all bodies that have some area of responsibility here. Now, we, as you've heard, literally only arrived yesterday, so we're really looking forward to discussing the issue of campaign finance with stakeholders to see how it is operational at the moment, and indeed to see what the future holds. But it's just too soon for us to make any comment, but we'd be delighted to do so on Friday week when we have the meetings.
Perhaps I can say there, that's why we would encourage people to be involved and use the email address and give their views, because the more views that we have, the more interaction that we have and the more stakeholders we speak to, the greater the depth of evidence that we can produce for any recommendations.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service. First of all, I'd like to ask you, are you also going to be observing the situation regarding the referendums that we're having?
Yes, please do.
It's not our main focus, but we will, because it is on the same day on election day, we will be observing the process as well.
Since I don't know whether this will fall into it and whether it would be something you have given consideration to, but the government did not enact any legislation. Once we'd established referendums in the Constitution, we never actually got the legislation that's generic, that would govern the rules part. So this referendum is being held without any rules of any kind that we're aware of, that we can see. I mean, obviously, there's the simple rules that would apply in terms of any election, in that, obviously your vote's secret and all that kind of thing. But there's been no regulations relating to the financing of the referendum, nothing to control misinformation. And obviously we have a situation where it is a government-led referendum where the government has taken a position, particularly on one of the questions, which is about the cruise port, probably the most dramatic of the three questions we're being asked. But civil society there's a couple of civil groups that are campaigning against it, and they have not had any sort of opportunity to be able to have a level playing field. They're effectively against the power of the state and the power of the public purse, whilst they have nothing. I would imagine that is something. I don't know whether there are standards around the world for referendums, so I'm curious about where you all stand on that. What are the standards for referendums, and are we complying with it even before voting day? Because I feel we might not be.
Let me answer initially there to say these are exactly the type of observation information that we will be gathering, the views, the opinions, what people think of the referendum, and the process itself. We're talking about the processes rather than the outcomes or the political drivers behind those referenda. So it's more about that process itself. So that's what we will be looking at. So I wouldn't comment on your view of that, but I would comment on saying that we look with interest at the way that referenda work, both here and I suppose around the world.
Well, and yes, it is very, very interesting, of course, and it's so inextricably linked now with the conduct of the election, but it actually, referenda don't come within the general global remit of election observation, and indeed there aren't any standards globally yet for referenda. Now, there is a lot of talk globally about the development of standards, because undoubtedly there is a need for standards in this area, but they don't yet exist. But you could certainly argue that there are good practices that have evolved in countries that have lots of referenda. And there indeed, though I won't be comparing it specifically to Ireland, we have frequent referenda in Ireland, so we have lots and lots of good practice. But certainly the Venice Commission on electoral standards does have some good practice. So, but we're at the beginning. We literally haven't had a meeting yet to discuss the referendum with anyone, but we look forward to. But we're not sure how much our capacity will be given our time in the country and our principal focus being the election. But we'll observe as much as we can.
Okay. Moving on to, not dissimilar actually, because it's really about the campaign, because we obviously, I think our main problems here are campaign finance, because we have such a limited window of opportunity. So we as journalists only get access to information about who's financing what for the 8-week period from nomination day to polling day. So we can only find out what a party has spent on the election in that period, whereas we are all very much aware of the fact that they spend money before that, because they spend money with us before that. Do you understand what I mean? Because obviously as media houses, we all take advertising, so we know that some of the advertising was booked and paid for before the election, so they won't have to declare that money that they spent, even though each one of us individually would know that there is obviously more money being spent than is being declared. So I don't know, in the past you guys have asked them to look at campaign finance, and politician after politician has said they're going to, but no one ever does. And we just wonder how far you can say that an election is free and fair when there's so much spending on elections that is not ever documented anywhere, and we have no clue where the money comes from or how much. Yeah. So where that standard of saying it's free and fair comes from, when money is fundamental these days to elections.
I have to start by saying again, we wouldn't make any recommendations at the moment until we've been through the observation process. Yeah. I will say that campaign finance will be something that we would look into, how it fits in with your law, what that law, the implications of that law as it exists at the moment, and what that may mean. And we would look around that area and obviously gain views on exactly the type of thing you've been speaking about. As we go through the process, but again, I have to say it is for your Parliament, your government, and your island to act on those things. We are not here to impose anything on, just to make hopefully good, clear recommendations from well performed observation with a well thought through process that has got some validity, difficult word to say, to it, because it has been repeated in a number of jurisdictions. Right. If you want to add to that, I think you guys.
My final question would be about people being able to report to you their observations of people vote buying and inducements to vote, which, you know, I mean, in a jurisdiction where year-round politicians admit openly to paying people's electricity bills, paying people's kids to go to school, paying for, you know, giving them shopping voucher cards and things like that, because they're their constituents and they need their help. So, and that's an open secret here. It's not. It's pretty well known that politicians, by nature, give money to their constituents, and usually to particularly specific constituents for obvious reasons, because their leadership. Connections in the community or church connections or whatever. So we have that situation that we're dealing with all the time, so it's not really. And we also have in the law that it is a criminal offence for the person receiving these inducements that they are punished as well, which is why it's very difficult for us, even as reporters, to get information from people who are being given money by politicians to say that they are, because they themselves fear punishment. So I was wondering whether you will be offering some kind of anonymous reporting of money because of the fears that people have. Well, I took the money. I'm poor, I took the money, and I'm going to go vote for who I like, but the politician gave me the money, so I'm taking it. So we can't get them to say that on the record because, well, we'll get in trouble. So I was just wondering whether you're going to do the anonymous.
A couple of things just before you start. I know I was going to say that Sandy did mention that everything that is sent to us is entirely confidential. I was going to plug the email address again, but I think we've done that twice already, so you can do that yourself. So there is a method of communication with us to report or to comment on any area of the election. Do you want to talk about the final part?
Yeah, and again, like, we only arrived last night, so again, I'm coming with very fresh eyes, and we haven't had time to meet with any stakeholders yet. And again, we don't report on hearsay ever. We check our facts and we talk to people directly. And again, as we did mention, very neutral, very impartiality, and very confidentiality. We will never mention somebody's name in a report or who we talk to. And we will be talking to a mixture of stakeholders, and probably somebody might come to us and say, this is what happened, and we'll take that and talk about it. It doesn't necessarily will say who told us or where they told us, but it will come in the overall of the report, basically. It's not going to be like a specific, Mr. Smith said this.
I would also add, and it was something that Anne said, we're not here to interfere with the election in any way. It is called an election observation mission.
Yeah.
That is the most important word, I think, of the whole thing. It is an observation, and we will comment on what we see, and those actions are then to be brought forward if it's up to the people of the Cayman Islands as to what they do with them.
And just one final thing, which is more of a technical. You said that you're going to be there from when the polling station's opened until the count is over. But there's also the bit where the boxes leave government and go out to the polling stations before they usually start. That sometime around 4:35ish, I think. I never bother watching. That's a bit early for me. But I just wonder whether there's somebody going to be checking that those boxes are all empty before they go out.
There is a process of the observation process itself goes through the actual election boxes. Do you want to talk about that?
I'm not sure if we're going to go at 4:30, maybe.
I mean, when we're at the polling station for the opening, we'll see what the process is, for. And
you'll get to see whether the boxes are empty at that point before the polling, the minutes before the polling station
We'll
opens.
be there to observe to see.
Because we're presumably going to watch the agents watch that, because the agents will obviously be there as well to watch the boxes.
In previous observations, all of us have seen that happen. That is a very common thing for us to do. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Thank you. Are there any more questions? Anyone online or? No. Thank you. Hello.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth Charles for CIG-TV. I'm first going to ask a question on behalf of Cayman Compass, and then I'll get to another question. You've been here now 3 times before. I think you're about to go into your 4th, is what you said. Are there any concerns that you have going in this year coming back to Cayman?
As I say, what you don't want to do when you observe an election is come with preconceived ideas. Remind you that we have been invited here, so we don't impose ourselves to say we're going to come. We are invited, which is a really positive thing, I think, for any jurisdiction that does that. And so that's where we are. We will observe and we will make comments. They may refer back to previously. We don't know until we've made the observations that we make during this election process. I think
it's good to know. No concerns going in, at least. My other question is, since Cayman is such a small country, it may be different from many other places, and you observe that it's a bit younger in the civic process in certain ways. Are there certain, I want to say heterogeneous, or certain specific practices that you have observed here in the past and or will be observing at this time that lend to non-conventional forms of accountability? In other words, what I'm trying to ask is, even if we don't have something written explicitly out on paper, are you observing other ways in which due process is observed?
The observation process, anyone who observes an election is trained by the CPA. and goes through a formal training process. So those people who are coming over on Friday as observers will have gone through that process. And there will be a number of areas that will be looked at during visits to polling stations, and information is gathered in a methodical way, using a process which is agreed by everybody and is common to everyone who observes. So there is a commonality to what we're looking for, which would pick up on also nuances. You're absolutely right. I come from a small island myself, smaller than this island actually, I found out today, and we've observed also another, I've observed in the Isle of Man, for example, myself as well. So one of the things I think makes us want to, I'm very keen to be here, is seeing the way that small islands work in their election process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Are there any other questions? Because I think we have a bit of time left. Anyone online want to ask anything? I feel like an auctioneer gone. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for your questions. And we look forward to the next few days and the next week or so, being on the island observing your elections, and to the next press conference where we'll have our preliminary reports, and we hope to see you all there as well. So with that, unless anyone else has anything to say,
Thank you.
we'll call the press conference an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you.